hula hoop.
So, I haven't made a video in, a minute, so I figured what better way to come back to my usual gaming channel where I post Let's Plays and make an in-depth review of a video game that requires significantly more editing and planning than the content that I was regularly posting for several years. But, you know, it's my channel. I do what I want. Most of you probably forgot I existed anyway, which, I mean, fair play, but fuck it. I like Halo. It's one of my favorite video game franchises of all time, despite some of the recent entries. And I wanted to talk about it. And hey, why just talk about one of my favorite ones? Why not go through all of them, starting of course with Halo Combat Evolved. I recorded this on the Master Chief Collection playing on normal difficulty. Don't worry, I've suffered legendary by myself, but my capture card is pretty old, so sorry, you're stuck at a dreaded 30 frames per second. I know my audio quality isn't fantastic either, but before I could buy a new microphone, we all got locked in our homes thanks to a virus, so I'm kinda stuck with my regular ass headset. So I'm going to break this down into a structured format. I'll start off with presentation, graphics and sounds, and all that good shit. Then follow it up with how the actual gameplay feels. Then I'll talk about the structure and the story of the campaign. Then I'll go into the multiplayer and finish off with my final thoughts. Well, so without further ado, let's kick things off with the presentation. So obviously for an 18-year-old game, it doesn't look very good by today's standards, which is why I'm going to try and put myself in the mind of someone from 18 years ago. And by that standard, looking at the games that came out around that time, it looks pretty damn impressive for 2001. Even today, there are still a few very impressive feats. For example, the skyboxes. My god, the skyboxes. The very first time you step out into the world on the second mission, and you look up and see the Halo ring, it's absolutely magnificent. Even some of the environments manage to look decent to this day. It's mainly the large, open-ended areas like the second level with its massive open fields and towering cliff walls, or the snow level with its frigid tundras and frozen-over ponds, or the swamp with its constant eerie fog and dreary trees all around. Standing on a particularly high point on the map and just looking over these environments gives you quite a nice view if I'm being honest. The lighting also stacks up really well, which helps the game look a lot nicer. There's some really good reflections that just make the game look so much better and more realistic. On top of the lighting, there are actually some pretty nice particle effects for the way bullets spark when they hit walls. It's a little touch, but the little things are what matter. But graphics aren't everything. Sound is a very important part in any game, and let me say, it does not disappoint. The first thing you'll notice is the great voice acting. Jen Taylor does a fantastic job as Cortana. It helps that they didn't do that thing where they turn an actor's voice into something more robotic and inhuman, and just let her voice be as is. I don't think she'd be quite as good if her voice was altered, considering how much life she brings to the character. Her quips and comments sound so natural, and you can tell she's having some fun with Cortana's more sarcastic comments. Steve Downes' voice is probably the only one more recognizable than Jen Taylor's, purely because of how iconic it is. The gruffness in his voice and the short lines he has do a great job of painting Master Chief as a real strong, silent character, but still give enough flavor so you know you're playing as another person. Tim Dadabo does a pretty great job at encapsulating Guilty Spark's simple, one-track mind of watching over Halo. I know I just said the fact that Jen Taylor's voice being natural rather than roboticized, robified, altered to sound more robotic is what helped make her performance so memorable, but that's because she's meant to be more of a human and natural character despite being an AI. Guilty Spark is meant to be the monitor of the Halo ring. That's his only purpose, so him sounding robotic makes sense because his personality and way of thinking is, well, robotic. Pete Stacker does a pretty nice job of playing a grizzled captain. I honestly don't really have so much to say about him. He does good. David Scully. Good lord did this man have fun voicing Johnson. He wasn't a hugely prominent role in the game, but my god did he do a great job. Johnson wouldn't be nearly as memorable as he is if it wasn't for this man's performance as an extremely intense sergeant, making wonderfully colorful threats that we still like to quote from time to time. On top of the voice acting is the sound design for all the weapons and vehicles, which is top notch. Every single weapon has a sound so distinct that you could easily tell them apart by that alone without even having to take a look at them. vehicles all have their own sounds as well. Granted, there aren't that many of them, a grand total of 6 compared to the larger array from the later games, but they all still come across as unique with their sounds. There's no mistaking the roar of a Warthog's engine to the wailing of a Banshee's thrusters. NPCs all have their own sounds as well for different scenarios. When a grunt starts to run in fear, they make high-pitched squeaking noises. When elites kill you, they gloat over your corpse in their tongue, or they just laugh. Jackals make high-pitched, distorted barking noises at each other. The flood enemies all gutturally groan and make these disgusting squishy noises when they move, and infection forms have this awful skittering noise they make when they walk, probably making fighting them quite unnerving. This isn't limited to the enemies either. Marines will often make remarks about what's going on, or lament your death if you get taken down in a fight. Alternatively, when you win a fight alongside them, they cheer and holler. These are relatively small additions, but they add a whole lot more believability to the world and make it feel a lot more lived in. And of course, the music. How can you talk about Halo without talking about its music? That opening theme with that monk choir is still burned into the memories of just about every single human being on the planet. Peak humanity. But why don't we listen to the actual song that got stuck in everybody's heads? Listening to that theme, you know you're in for one hell of an adventure. That choir playing is just absolutely full of mystery, and it kinda has to be with that big-ass halo ring in the back. You wanna know what it is. You wanna know why you're here. Do you wanna use it? You wanna blow it up? Do you wanna forcibly sell your pops out? Wait, that's the wrong game. But the track is just so simple, yet so iconic that it's permanently burned into our minds. While the other tracks are arguably not quite as memorable as the main theme, I mean, come on, those are some big shoes to fill. They don't disappoint, all adding a great deal of ambience to the situation that they're played in. Like the harsh, droning noises playing through the library as you trudge through seemingly endless dark hallways with constant swarms of horrific enemies. The heroic orchestra played during assault on the control room as you team up with squads of Marines to fight an all-out battle against the Covenant in the snowy tundra. Just take a listen to some of these tracks. These are the kinds of songs that add so much more life to a game already teeming with character. You'll instantly recognize them when they come on, and likely the level associated with them as well. The music in the game is just phenomenal. Now, that's all well and good, but how's the actual gameplay itself? So how does Halo stack up to shooters of today? Good, but also not so good. Let's start with the not so good since it's the first thing you'll notice. Movement. It's not bad per se, but it does feel a little clunky and dated. Not to an egregious extent, but if you've been playing a lot of some more modern games like Titanfall 2, you're gonna have one hell of a shock when you step into Master Chief's lead boost that also happen to have rocket packs that let you jump higher than an NBA player in moon shoes on a trampoline. Now, the jump height isn't really much of an issue. It's actually quite a benefit considering that it's great for throwing enemies off their shot and maneuvering through the environment, getting yourself to a better position, jumping over cover, all that fun stuff. Next up is the movement. In vehicles. I'm just gonna say it. It's bad. Banshees and Scorpions handle pretty decently, but Warthogs feel like they're constantly on ice, and don't even get me started on actually driving on ice in these things. I understand that it's a giant hunk of metal on wheels, but seriously, this doesn't feel like a versatile Jeep. It feels like I'm on top of an actual Warthog with Vaseline on its hooves. The Ghost is an even worse offender. The Covenant can figure out how to defy gravity and friction, but they never stop to consider the consequences of doing this. Yeah, you can speed over land and small obstacles easily, but if you want to stop when you see a cliff, well, you should have done that a mile before you saw it because now you're in the wall. What the hell are you thinking, you alien fex? But now that that's out of the way, let's get on to what really matters in this game. The shooting. God damn does it feel good to shoot in this game. Not only are the sound effects superb, like I mentioned before, but everything handles so well. Weapons all feel really, really good to fire. All the weapons not only sound unique, but they feel unique and are ideal for different situations. Got a sentinel bugging you? Just fire an overcharged plasma pistol shot. Enemy on a high ledge with no magnum? Fire a few controlled plasma rifle bursts and just take him down. Bloodforms swarming you? Grab a shotgun and shred them. Got a magnum? Shoot it! It's basically the equivalent of having a bolt pistol from Warhammer 40k.
Space Marine!
In addition to guns, you got grenades. Two types of them, frag and plasma. And you can carry 4 of each. Frag grenades will bounce around and only explode after they've stopped moving. Plasma grenades work similarly, but they barely bounce. Instead, they have an advantage of being able to stick to enemies. Frags are usually better for taking care of clusters of enemies by flushing them out of cover, where plasmas are great for single enemies with a lot of health, and maybe if they have a few smaller ones around them. It's honestly nice to have a little bit of variety with grenades, since in most games they're usually just a simple throw ball, it explodes. Now you've got throw ball, it explodes, or throw ball, it sticks, and it explodes. There's proper feedback for every hit that you get on an enemy too, with blood flying on smaller enemies, elite shields flaring up before bursting satisfyingly after they're overwhelmed, flesh chunks flying off the flood. Some enemies are also staggered with enough hits, so if you choose to play more aggressively, you can definitely be rewarded with some surprised grunts from elites or terrified screams from the grunts. And this segues into my next topic, the AI. The AI in this game is actually pretty good. Enemies will throw grenades at you to try to flush you out of cover, some will try to flank you, others will hang back and take shots if they feel like it's safer. Grunts, being the short little cannon fodder they are, will usually turn and run in fear if their elite commander is killed, which makes them feel all the more realistic. Although sometimes you see some unique things. See this Marine? Seems like a normal guy, right? Wrong. What you're looking at is the distant descendant of Lee Harvey Oswald. And he's on his 3rd bottle of Adderall today. I also came across this touching unification of the Flood and the Covenant. A hunter had adopted an infection form and was playing with it. Unfortunately, the infection form jumped upon me and ended up dying to my energy shield. The hunter, outraged by the loss of his newfound pet, assaulted me and I was forced to act in self-defense. But those little quirks aside, the AI feels mostly solid and it gets the job done, making the enemies feel threatening and the Marines feel alive. The game also has a 2 health bar system. Your shields, which are your first line of defense and will regenerate when out of combat, and your health, which doesn't regenerate out of combat, but you can regenerate it using health packs that are found around the level. It's honestly not a bad balance to have both of these health bars rather than just one. It punishes you for being reckless, but at the same time, doesn't make you a glass Roomba with a gun taped to it if you lose your health, since you have your shields to give you a little bit of leeway. The campaign structure itself now. Well, it starts off fairly standard for an FPS of the time. You're in fairly tightly packed corridors, fighting aliens as they come through various doors and rooms. It's a great way to properly get players into the game with something they're familiar with. Hallways full of enemies to riddle with bullets. On the surface, it doesn't seem too special aside from the superb sound design and nice shooting, but things change very quickly. One might say the combat evolves. Right after this confined space, you're thrown into the biggest shift in level design, to a massive, wide-open woodland area with waterfalls, pine trees, grassy mountains, the works. This was absolutely mind-boggling at the time. Remember, one of the most popular shooters around at that time was GoldenEye, which, while a great game, had nothing this big. You're given these massive, open areas to approach combat in a variety of different ways. Not only that, but later in this very mission, you're introduced to something completely different. Driving.
Roger, Cortana. Okay, Charlie Team, Warthog deployed. Satellite.
You get to hop into this Jeep with some AI allies riding shotgun and manning the turret in the back. It's a pretty damn fun section despite the wonky driving, and it adds a whole new layer to the gameplay, and it's not used as just a one-off segment. It's expanded upon further into the game. This is just you giving a taste and introducing you to it. And as you can tell, hopping into a vehicle throws you from a first-person perspective into a third-person one in order to let you get a better view of the action around you, which makes things a hell of a lot easier. But if you choose to hop into the shotgun of a Warthog, you stay in your first-person view. You also get a bit of a choice in this level. Yeah, you'll need to save all the Marines who crashed on the Halo ring with you, but you get to choose which order you do it in. Do you want to save the ones trapped inside an ancient alien structure? Or the ones trapped in a rocky canyon? Or maybe the ones stuck in a valley with some snipers? It's all up to you. The next mission is another fairly familiar one, fighting through narrow spaces and arenas with various weapons until you get to the end. But things pick up the next level in, where you drive around an island in a warthog and gun down some aliens with your squad mates, putting more emphasis on the vehicle combat. And then you get the big one. Yeah, you get to drive around a snowy tundra with a tank and blow the shit out of everything that dares to step in front of your mighty treads. It's pretty fucking great, honestly. It's basically a power trip to give you a nice break from just gunning down aliens and shoot-banging anything that moves. Now you roll around and do it with an even bigger gun. And hell, when you come back to this level later in the game, you get to fly around on a Banshee, just soaring above the canyon and launching explosives and plasma bolts down upon your enemies. How do you like it, huh? How do you like it? But right after the first run of the level, you get to the swamp level. It's really eerie with the rain and fog, even as you're fighting through the Covenant. Ah well, time to find keys. I thought the Marines were lost in the structure. Why are the Covenant running? Okay, well, no big deal. I'll mop them up and meet up with them. Okay, maybe they went down the elevator. Wow. I guess they really did a number on... Yeah, something's not right. This is how you meet the new enemy faction in the game, the Flood. They're a stark contrast to the Covenant in that they're small alien life forms that consume and take over the bodies of sentient life and use it as vessels to kill their enemies. The horror atmosphere for the first half of this level really sells it, and watching video footage from the dead Marine's helmet to see the Flood swarm out for the first time and overwhelm them is downright chilling, even today. The Flood add a whole other level to the gameplay as well, forcing you to fight enemies that primarily charge at you. Although as you progress through the game, you'll find that they're capable of using weapons too. On top of that, they're at odds with the Covenant as well, leading to some pretty interesting three-way battles between you, the zombie aliens, and the religious aliens. It also shows that the Flood are truly not an enemy to be taken lightly. The Covenant have been a huge threat to you for the entire game, and now you have the Flood, which are a threat to them? Yeah, it's not a good time to be a human. The other levels are sort of a mix of the rest. The library is a pretty wide open area, but it has a few tight corridors to keep the winding halls from getting too stale. It don't work though. It kind of feels like it outstays its welcome after the second floor. Though the big hallways and structures do paint a really nice picture of an ancient, fallen civilization. And Guilty Spark's quips about your quote-unquote combat skin and acting like he knows you, even going so far as to say that you asked him something in the past, does paint an interesting picture, but we'll get to that. Keys is half a reuse of Truth and Reconciliation's tightly packed Covenant ship interior, with a new area beneath the ship in between that offers some longer canyons for sniping enemies. When it works. And of course, the Maw, which has you fighting in the same tight areas from the first level, but with the Flood this time, as well as the Covenant. And it ends with the famous Warthog run. While somewhat frustrating with the dated driving controls, it's still one hell of a set piece with some of the best music in the game. You get to the ship, escape the ring, blow it up, and the game ends. Now all of this is great, and it's a fun campaign to go through, but what about the narrative content?
You can't imagine the wealth of information. The knowledge, so much, so fast. It's glorious.
So there are going to be some spoilers, obviously. If you care about having an 18-year-old game spoiled, go to this timestamp here. I'm going to give you until the count of now. The story of Halo is fairly simple, so let's go through the basic rundown first. You're an uber badass space soldier who wakes up from icy sleep, meets up with his captain, and then puts his big titty holographic GF into his helmet to fight off some aliens invading the ship. You get shot down with this giant ass hula hoop and have to fight your way through some more aliens and save the humans. Then do a 180 and invade the alien ship to save your captain. He tells you about a thing, and then you go and find the thing, but oh no, it's really just a door to the real thing. Then you go further in to find the hula hoop is actually something dangerous, but your GF won't tell you and she just tells you to get lost. So you get lost in the swamp. And you go into an alien base. These are different aliens from there. You actually never see them, by the way. They don't appear in the game. And meet with some space zombies who will try to kill you before getting kidnapped by a light bulb who takes you through hell, a library, to find a key. The key is to the hula hoop, and your GF tells you it'll kill everyone, so like, don't do that. Then you go and find your captain is taken again, but this time by the space zombies. So you go save him, get some codes out of his future brain ship, and then go back to the ship you crashed on so you can do a big explode and destroy the hula hoop and save the universe. Okay, well, now you have the basics, so let's get into a more detailed explanation. You play as Spartan John 117, the Master Chief, a highly augmented and heavily armored super soldier, part of the United Nations Space Command, or UNSC. Apparently, in the Halo universe, the UN is actually useful. They're a part of the United Earth government, as by the year 2552, humanity has settlements and even major cities on planets all throughout the galaxy. You wake up from cryogenic sleep on the Pillar of Autumn as it's being attacked, and get yourself reacquainted with moving around. You move to the bridge and meet with Captain Keyes and the AI of the ship, Cortana, who acts as your companion throughout most of the game. The attackers of your ship are a coalition of aliens known as the Covenant. You fight them off as best as you're able, but the ship is too badly damaged, so you get into a lifeboat with some marines and crash down upon the nearby planet, which just so happens to be a ring of some sorts. Here you have to navigate around the ring and save some trapped squads of UNSC marines who are on the ship with you while trying to find Captain Keyes. You find out Captain Keyes is on a Covenant ship known as the Truth and Reconciliation. Apparently these aliens read the Bible, thought some words sounded cool, and started naming everything after the stuff they read. You sneak through the area with the world's quietest sniper rifle, and board the ship, rescuing Keyes and a few other marines. He tells you that the ring is called Halo by the Covenant, and it may be some sort of weapon. Cortana also mentions that the Covenant seem to treat the ring as some sort of massive religious icon. Keyes points you in the direction of the Silent Cartographer, something that could lead to more information about the ring or perhaps how to control it. But of course, you have to fight your way through it. Once you do, you descend beneath Halo's surface in search of more information about the ring and a way to stop it or even control it. The Covenant have already set up shop, so you need to blast and drive your way through the surprisingly realistic weather that a supposed artificial world is able to create. You find your way to what appears to be the control room of Halo and put Cortana into the system to learn more about it. She finds out that the ring is a lot more than a weapon and sends you away to find Keyes, who is searching for a possible weapons cache before she can explain, even though it would take like 6 seconds to give him a TLDR. Regardless, you find your way into a swamp part of the ring and enter into a base that the Covenant appears to be retreating from with sheer panic. Of course, being Master Chief, you waltz on in like nobody's business and shoot the remaining aliens while in search of information. Well, you find information in the form of a video from a dead Marine's helmet of some sort of parasitic life form known as the Flood. You escape the base and meet up with a small robot calling itself 343 Guilty Spark, the monitor of the ring that you're on. He teleports you to a location known as the library and leads you through hordes of Flood while a few robotic sentinels fight alongside you towards something called the Index, all while calling you the Reclaimer. Apparently the Index can activate Halo and destroy the Flood. All's well and good then. He then teleports you to the control room with Cortana, who seems furious with him. She then, finally, explains what Halo is. Apparently it is a weapon, but it doesn't destroy the Flood. It instead kills off their food, which is all life in the universe, so that it'll eventually starve to death. Guilty Spark confirms this and tries to activate Halo, but you and Cortana stop him and decide to destroy Halo by blowing up the Pillar of Autumn, which is still somewhere on the ring. However, you need codes from Captain Keyes, who ended up back on the Truth and Reconciliation. So off you go, back to the Truth and Reconciliation, fight your way through the ship, now swarming with the Flood, and find Keyes, who has been integrated into something absolutely horrific, massive rotten flesh, and oh dear sweet Jesus, you just punch through his head and you get the chip and fuck, you gotta get the hell out of there. Just leave. You then make your way back to the Pillar of Autumn, fighting your way through the Flood and the Covenant to begin the self-destruct, but nothing can be easy. Guilty Spark stops the detonation sequence and sends sentinels after you as you try to figure out another way. So you and Cortana make your way to the engine room and start lobbing grenades into the vents to manually self-destruct the ship. It works, and then you have to hop into a Warthog and drive out of the ship, which is for some reason several kilometers long, so you can get to the hangar and into a fighter ship that you can then hop in and fly away as you watch Halo's destruction. So what makes this story so good? Well, first of all, it's fairly simple in the beginning, something that most players will be familiar with. Wake up, shoot aliens, stop them from activating a superweapon, save the universe. However, because of the addition of the Flood and the Covenant's reason for wanting to activate Halo, it's much more interesting than just a run-of-the-mill shooter. Rather than just being big bad aliens who want to be big and bad and wipe out humanity because they're big and bad, the Covenant is fighting humanity because of its impediment to their great journey, of which activating Halo is a part of. This is explained later in the series to some greater detail, but even in this game, Cortana does mention that the ring holds some sort of religious significance to the Covenant. So they either don't know that the ring will destroy all life in the universe, or they think that that's just their next step in their religious story. They're not evil for the sake of being evil, they have an actual motivation behind them, which makes them a much better villain. The Flood poses a more familiar destroy all life threat than the Covenant, and adds an extra layer of tension to the story. They're already clearly a major threat, but the only known way to stop them is to activate Halo, which will destroy all life in the universe. It leaves you in a conundrum. How are we going to defeat this unwavering, seemingly endless enemy? What could we possibly do? More motivation for actually fighting them, like maybe you can find another way to destroy them and prevent the activation of Halo. The story is also carried along by some great characters. Captain Keyes is the first one you'll meet. While he may not be the most interesting of characters given his fairly limited screen time, he still leaves a memorable impression with his ability to be professional, but not completely blinded by the chain of command. For example, when he reprimands Master Chief for saving him, telling him how dangerous it was and that he shouldn't have come, immediately before expressing his gratitude. Though I still do question his methods of carrying around guns.
I don't keep it loaded, son. You'll have to find ammo as you go.
What? Why don't you keep it loaded? What if you need ammo? What if you're attacked? What's the point of carrying a gun without ammo? It's a pistol. It's not exactly a high symbol of authority just to carry it. You're extremely irresponsible when it comes to self-defense. Cortana is the next character you meet, and as I said, she stays with you through most of the game, and right off the bat you can instantly believe that Master Chief and Cortana have history together. She's the brains to Master Chief's brawn. Not to say he's a dullard, but it's hard to compete with a highly advanced AI that can scan an entire ancient alien computer in seconds. She adds a bit of commentary to things that happen around you in the game, expressing both concerns such as when the Marines die and snark. Despite everything going on and the absolute hell around them, the two of them do have some pretty good banter.
Sleep well?
No thanks to your driving, yes.
So you did miss me.
Let's stay focused. Halo, how do we use it against the Covenant?
This ring isn't a cudgel, you barbarian. It's something else. Oh, I see. The coordinate data needs to be... Right. Sorry.
This kind of comedy also keeps things from getting too dark. There's a certain lightheartedness that comes with the pair, and it really helps alleviate the constant feeling of, oh dear sweet Jesus, there's so much going on, God save us! It's not constantly hammered into us either, it's just sprinkled throughout the game so that it doesn't feel too forced or outstay its welcome. Cortana also acts like Master Chief's voice to some extent, but not entirely as a replacement. He's the strong, silent type, not uncommon for video game protagonists, especially at the time, but he does have his own voice. He's his own person. You'll never feel like you're just Cortana using Master Chief as an avatar, not just because of the few missions that you're separated from her, but because there's a clear distinction between the two of them. Cortana is great at explaining things technically and conveying a lot of information, something that's often required in the midst of battle when Master Chief is focusing on not dying. It's kinda hard to explain things when you're getting shot at and having grenades lobbed at you. Master Chief never talks while you're playing as him and only speaks during the cutscenes, and it's there that you can see there's some dynamic between him and Cortana. It's there that you can feel the two complement each other rather than morphing into one being, unlike some of Bungie's other current projects. Bottom line is, rather than just being a voice replacement for Master Chief, Cortana is her own personality, capable of doing things that Master Chief can't do, and vice versa. The other AI character in the game, good old 343 Guilty Spark, mumbles to himself about how smart he is in the library. He also seems completely dumbfounded at the idea that Master Chief doesn't want to destroy all life in the universe, as he was programmed purely to monitor the Halo ring and oversee it being fired, going so far as to attempt to kill Chief and Cortana and to stop their plan to blow up the Pillar of Autumn. There's not a lot to say about him. Not yet, at least. He does actually make a few interesting comments throughout the story, like I mentioned earlier. Like I said, he'll talk about Chief's combat skin on occasions, and when being confronted with Cortana and Chief in the control room, he mentions that Chief asked him a question in the past, which is very strange. He also, while sifting through the Pillar of Autumn's archives, mentions something about their lost archives, and mentions that it's known as human history. It has a lot of interesting implications, but we'll get to that in another video. There's not a lot more to say about Guilty Spark, but like I said, we'll get to that. Going back to the lightheartedness, there's the side character Sergeant Johnson. How could I not talk about Johnson? There's not much to say about him here, though. He appears in the beginning of the game, giving an inspirational speech as the Pillar of Autumn is attacked, which changes based on the difficulty you're playing on, which is cool. Then he pops up in the middle of the game during the aforementioned video recording on the Marine's helmet, blasting some rock music in the Pelican as his squadmates complain. Then he appears in the legendary ending of the game, on the Halo ring, hugging an elite as the ring explodes. That's kind of it. But the speeches are so damn memorable and quotable that you just can't help but love him. All of these characters come together to make for quite a memorable story, if not a simple one when you boil it down to its core. It's not going to win any awards, but all in all, Halo Combat Evolved's campaign is not one that you're bound to forget anytime soon. I've been talking about the campaign for half an hour. Oh, Jesus, I should talk about the multiplayer. So, full disclosure, I didn't play the multiplayer when it was relevant. I know, big surprise. Someone who was a mere child when the game released never played the multiplayer. I did play it on the Master Chief Collection, however. So, is it as good as people say it is? Well, it's not bad, but it's definitely far from perfect. But let's start with what's good. What's great about it is that everyone starts with the exact same gear, an assault rifle and a magnum. Even though realistically, you only need the magnum. Either way, it's great because it leaves all players on an even playing field. Unlike some games where you have to pick your loadout, you'll never have an inherent advantage over someone just because you picked the right boomstick. That doesn't mean you can't gain an advantage, though. There are power-ups scattered throughout the map, like overshields that give your shields a boost and active camouflage that turns you invisible. There's also other weapons lying around the map for you to pick up. Needlers, shotguns, sniper rifles, hell, even a flamethrower. This wasn't in the campaign. Kinda wish it was. It rewards players for learning the maps the more they play, finding where weapons spawn, the best place to use them, but even if you're not familiar with the maps, you can learn pretty quickly. Even for an old game, they do their best to make things stand out and make navigation a bit easier with landmarks. Unless it's a symmetrical map, but in that case, everything's the same anyway, so it doesn't matter. Speaking of the maps, the smaller maps are designed very nicely with plenty of high points and low points. Narrow spaces, open areas, all that good stuff. There's a lot of room for varying playstyles, whether you want to be up in someone's face or picking them off from a distance. There are maps where certain playstyles are more viable than others, but it's still a fairly good balance. They're not perfect though, but I think it has less to do with the maps themselves and more some of the programming going into them. Yet spawn locations aren't great. It's pretty frustrating when you spawn in front of half the enemy team and get bolt pistoled into oblivion. It's not so much a problem that it makes it unplayable, but it does get really annoying. Let's talk about the bigger maps. These allow for vehicles to be thrown into the mix, and that can turn things pretty chaotic. In a good way, though. It's pretty fun to see warthogs sliding about the place. These maps are usually a lot bigger, with more focus on open spaces rather than tight corridors. They exist, but they're not quite as prevalent. Though if you don't have a vehicle, be prepared to pathologic your way to the action. Yep. Honestly, I don't have a lot else to say about the multiplayer. It's fun, mostly balanced, and it has well-designed maps with just a few frustrating spawns. And that's kind of what I have to say about all of Halo. It's a very fun, balanced game with good multiplayer, a well-designed campaign, and a pretty damn good narrative to go along with it. If you haven't gotten a chance to play it for whatever reason, I'd recommend grabbing it. Obviously, it's a lot easier to play it through the Master Chief Collection, so if you're really itching to play it but don't want the other Halo games, just get the $1 Xbox Game Pass for a month and cancel it after you're done playing. Or keep using it and play the rest of the Halo games. Or keep using it just for Halo CE. I don't know, we're in quarantine, do whatever you want. You can also find a physical copy of the original game, but that's not nearly as easy to do. So yeah, that's the end. Thanks for watching my garbage, and thanks to anyone who managed to stay subscribed despite me not making anything, even though I'm sure many of you just kind of forgot to unsubscribe. I don't really know if this is the way I'm going to entirely take the channel, or if I'm just going to review the Halo games and be done with it. I haven't really decided yet. I guess we'll see. I don't really know how to end this video.